Hi, this is another one of our Crosstalk podcasts brought to you by MK Connect. We are a branch of Compass Ministries. However, any thoughts and opinions expressed here is independent of the Compass Ministries group. Today we have with us Tammy Sharp. She's going to be sharing with us about MuKappa. I do apologize in advance if my voice sounds a little scratchy on this recording because I am fighting a cold today. So it just is what it is. And I am Rebecca Nettles, in case I forgot to introduce myself earlier. So hi, Tammy, welcome.
Hi, Rebecca. It's so great to be here and to talk with you today.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could make it. So I was wondering, how did you get started in the MK ministry originally?
Well, I got started because of my parents, actually. My parents went to Brazil to work at an MK school, a missionary kids school. So I was basically born and raised in the missionary kid community. I actually lived on the school campus my whole life, from 0 to 18 life. And my dad, he was very enthusiastic about learning all he could about MKs. And he, back in the 80s, there was these big international conferences for missionary kids. And he went to them from Brazil. He went to Quito, Ecuador. He went to Faith Academy in the Philippines, to Nairobi, and to learn all he could. And he actually wrote his thesis for his PhD on missionary kids.
Wow.
And so as a 7th grader, he would pay us like $1 an hour or $1 a mistake to find, mistakes in his dissertation. So so I just grew up my whole life, hearing and being around MKs. And so I decided I wanted to be a teacher and teach at a missionary kids school like my parents. So yeah, that's a long story short. I ended up being a teacher, going back to Brazil to teach. Actually, I wanted to go somewhere else, mostly because I had been there, done that. I love Brazil, but there was more of the world to explore. But ended back there as a teacher at the MK school, and then was wanting to finish my graduate degree in education, planning to go back overseas and teach at a different MK school, when God really laid it on my heart, actually called me to work out of our mission agency as the MK coordinator. And I was asked by somebody in the office to consider that. So one of the questions was what school in Brazil? It was Amazon Valley Academy. I grew up in Belém at the mouth of the Amazon River. Forgot to say that part. Brazil's a big country. So I grew up 0 to 18 at the mouth of the Amazon River.
Okay. And do you identify as Brazilian or MK third culture kid? What's your personal connection?
Yeah, so I was born in Brazil. So if you're born there, you get a passport and you're a Brazilian. That's just, which is awesome. So I actually have 3 passports right now that are all current and active. So my dad is Canadian and my mom is from Alaska, and so obviously American. And growing up, I identified a lot more as a Canadian MK because when we weren't in Brazil, we went back to Canada for our home ministry assignment. And I went to, 4th grade and 7th grade in Calgary, Alberta. And I thought about attending university in Canada, but at the time I was wanting to go to a Christian school and there were a lot more options in the United States. So when I was in Brazil, I didn't really look like at least in the Amazon, I didn't look like the Brazilians around me. Down south in Brazil, I probably would have fit in a lot better. But then going back to Canada and Alaska, I was not like my cousins or rest of my family for sure. I remember my French teacher in Alberta commenting how awesome I was at French, which I know nothing about French, but because of Portuguese, I really picked up the French when I was in public school there.
Okay, cool. Very multicultural background. So, what is MuKappa and how was it started?
Yeah, so when I I ended up going to college in the United States, and I went to Wheaton College. And when I
Mhm.
got there, there was a MuKappa chapter there. And so I was actually in MuKappa in college back then, and it was a campus club for missionary kids.
Mhm.
And today we've defined it as a collegiate organization for students who have grown up cross-culturally. And so we've wanted to, there are some missionary kids who are growing up that can't say the word missionary,
Mhm.
and depending on what country they're growing up in. So we've opened up MuKappa to include all third culture kid experiences, whether it's military or business or diplomat, and also international students. So there's about 20 chapters currently in the US. Right now, it's only US based, and it's I call it like a campus club on campus, yeah, or
Mhm.
universities for anyone that has had that cross cultural experience.
Okay. Um, so what ministries and work do you do now? I know you're heavily involved with Compass, or not Compass, excuse me, MuKappa. um, I believe you're the director of it right now, or did I get that wrong?
Yeah, I became the director a few years ago after Donna Messenger,
Mhm.
and she became the director after Perry Bradford. But I
Mhm.
forgot to mention how MuKappa had started,
Mhm.
because there's a really cool development this year
Yeah.
that's just been really neat to see the Lord's kind of working in the last 30 some years. But MuKappa started in the late 80s at Taylor University
Mhm.
by students who wanted to help the freshmen as they transitioned into their school. And so they got a list of all the incoming freshmen that were coming from different countries and just wanted to welcome them on campus. Well, other schools heard about it and wanted to do the same thing that Taylor was doing. Taylor is in Indiana. Um, but the Taylor students were really busy, as
Mhm.
students are. And so they couldn't like help other schools. At that time, there was a couple with Wycliffe that was going around to all the different schools and visiting Wycliffe missionary kids in school and college. And so this couple said, hey, we can like take MuKappa around and explain it and help other schools get started. And then this couple went to Urbana, I think it was in 1987, set
Mm.
up a MuKappa table and said, hey, if you're an MK, let us know. We'll come talk to you. And so all these MKs have said, hey, yeah, we want a MuKappa chapter. And so Urbana is a big missions conference, so for college students. And so all these students came to Urbana. A lot of them were missionary kids, were very interested in having a MuKappa chapter. And so that Wycliffe couple went around and helped them all get started. Then they moved from Wycliffe to work at Barnabas International. And this is how MuKappa came into being under Barnabas International, which is where I work now in Barnabas. And the reason why I wanted to just bring that up is that MuKappa, which is under Barnabas, is going to be helping to host a TCK lounge at Urbana this year. So
Aw.
it's in Indiana, and it's in Indiana too. And so it's just kind of full circle to come back around. I've been working with InterVarsity, and we got final permission for our TCK lounge. So just a shout out to anyone listening, or if you're going to Urbana, to come hang out in the TCK lounge. So MuKappa International and InterVarsity are hosting the lounge. So in Barnabas, where I am a full-time missionary, I'm the director of MuKappa, but there's like, you asked the question about what other things that I do.
Mhm.
So I usually tell people I have two parts of what I do. One is MuKappa, and the other is TCK ministry or TCK consulting. So for younger kids, like before university, I do a lot of one-on-one debriefing with them.
Okay.
This week, I was debriefing some Russian MKs who got evacuated from Russia because of what's going on right now. And they tried to go to Estonia, and that they couldn't get the flights got canceled. They tried to go to Poland, they couldn't get there. And so they ended up in Kyrgyzstan temporarily. They don't know when can they go back to Russia. They left their dog and everything behind. And so, yeah, so just helping younger kids process their stories and their experiences. So I do a lot of that, talking with parents about TCK things. I'm going to the Dominican Republic this coming week with a team from Barnabas that's doing a crisis debrief retreat for a team in the Dominican Republic, but I'm working with the kids. And so I'm doing some debriefing things with the different ages of kids there and some one-on-one with the teenagers. And then the other part of the TCK piece is the adult third culture kid piece. That's why I'm super excited about what Compass has been doing. But I have a team of adult TCKs that help think through some ideas of what to do for adult TCKs. And one of them is the retreats. We host the retreat as well. It's in Michigan, usually in the fall, end of October. And we're trying to start some book clubs or some other types of things, but we haven't quite got started yet. But we have the retreat every fall. So I'm working with a group of adult TCKs. Also, I meet with adult TCKs as well to do debriefing or just talk through their stories. Okay. So that was a long answer to your question, but
no,
yeah. So MuKappa is one piece, answer. And then other TCK things, all ages. I would say like ages 5 and up, 5 to age 80, 90.
Wow, that's amazing though. Like you work with like all the ages and the situations. No, I love that. So in your experience working with TCKs and MKs, what have you noticed that some of the biggest strengths and weaknesses are in TCKs and MKs attending college?
Yeah, there's lots of things to say here. I was thinking about that. One of the strengths, I think, for MKs going into college is that there's a community there. I think MKs are really good at making friends and making relationships, getting to know people. A lot of MKs can be good at welcoming other people in, like those Taylor MKs back in MuKappa were like, how do we welcome the new ones? So just having that kind of heart. But I think just going to college in general it gives the opportunity to have a peer group, to have a community, a place to belong. You have your dorm that you live in, your classes that you go to. It gives a sense of purpose of I'm here to study there's friends around me. So I would say those are some strengths for going to school. Not that everyone needs to go to college, but I feel like sometimes MKs and TCKs who don't do the college route, it's a little bit harder to find those things, that find community, to figure out where do I belong, how do I fit in, how do I understand American culture. So oftentimes that's a good transition time for MKs to go from living overseas cross-culturally to then living adult life, either in the US or somewhere else.
Okay.
I was thinking about some of the weaknesses, and one weakness, I think a lot of in the TCK book and some of the writings talks a little bit about a delayed adolescence sometimes, that MKs don't have sometimes the option of choosing or having choice or having work experience. And so I think a weakness in college sometimes is not having a lot of structure. You can have structure, but not having enough structure. Some MKs don't do very well. with not having that structure around them. So that can be a weakness of this kind of adolescent rebellion, could happen in college. I think also another weakness in going to college can be lack of work experience. Is traditionally teenagers in the United States are having some 2 or 3 years of work, and then MKs going to college. Some have to work because they have to pay the school bills, but not being able to have that kind of experience to be able to get a job opportunity. I think mental health is a huge challenge, and I think some of your podcasts have talked about that, but mental health for everybody in college these days. So it could be a challenge with the TCKs who are also processing their losses, their transitions, their grief, not having maybe family or community close by to them. That can be something that can be hard for them. And then just, yeah, I think sometimes one thing that can happen is sometimes MKs are not giving the opportunity to make decisions because everything is made for them around them. All the decisions are made. And so trying to figure out your career choice and what are you doing with your life and where are you going to live? And so I think not having this clarity of making decisions well leads some people to get married too soon, or not choosing a career that is really what they want to study, or are good at doing. So
yeah, no, I can comprehend that. Like, I grew up on a base, like, so an enclosed community that all was on a set schedule. So moving back to the US, I did have some structure, and I wasn't in college yet, but like, yeah, it felt very strange just literally having all the power in my hands. Like, it was like, is this even okay? Am I sinning right now? Like, it was like all like the religious talk and the responsibility talks was like, yeah.
Yeah.
True. What advice would you give parents sending their kids to college?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I thought about it in that when I look back at my experience and what my parents did, I realized that my parents were actually very unusual, and but they did several things really well. And so I thought it would be something that any parents can do. But one thing I thought that parents can do is actually understand the TCK experience. Reading the TCK book, or understanding what a TCK is, or why there's, hard time understanding our identity or our belonging, and processing grief and those kinds of things. And so when I thought about my parents, like I said, my dad, like, he was writing his PhD on TCKs, so I remember my mom, actually, I graduated from school in Brazil, and I was living, summer, we're moving around all the time, and I'm just a disaster after I graduated from, I just left all my friends and my whole life and getting ready to go to college. And my mom, I just was pretty angry and just bitter, and so my mom gave me this space, and she said, I think this is because of that TCK piece. And she just was really understanding and gave me that space to grieve, to process, to not have to do all the family events, and not have to be as involved, but just gave me that space. So I think that was one thing my parents did well. So I would say, understand the TCK experience. The second thing is prepare your kid for like living in the US and living the adult life. Like, they need to know how to drive a car, even if they don't have a car, but everyone needs a driver's license, and understanding a bank account and things like that. I'm still surprised in this day and age by how many MKs I meet that don't have a driver's license or don't have some basic skills, and are struggling. And I remember talking to a parent, this is a while ago, but they were in Latin America somewhere, and he wanted to ship his kid off somewhere to somewhere. And he's like, who can I send my kid to in the US and that could help them learn these skills and, get ready for college and do all of that training. And I'm like, yeah, no, you need to come back and you need to help your child, whether they're 18, 19, 20, but it's your responsibility as a parent to make sure that they can adjust and that they can live on their own. And I know some parents come back during that time and help their kids adjust and transition well. And so it depends on the family dynamic and situation. But I would say, so that second thing is just, make sure that your child can live in the United States or wherever they're going, whatever, if they're going back somewhere else. Another thing is securing somewhere for them to go on the holidays, for spring breaks, for summer, for Christmas, somewhere that they know. And the parents need to do some of that background work to find a church family, to make sure which relatives will host you. And when my parents left me for college to go back to Brazil, I knew that my aunt and uncle in Alaska was where I could go. And I could live there for the summer, and I could leave my car there. Like when I flew back to college, that I could go there for Christmas. And now I didn't need to go there, but that was somewhere that my parents had said, this is a home that you can go to, and just a space. That they did that work with my aunt and uncle of making sure that was somewhere that we could feel safe and go to, or feel like we belong there. And so I did. I lived with them for 3 summers of college.
That's awesome.
Another thing my mom did is she established a prayer network for me. And this is back before the internet, so it dates me, but my mom found a person in the United States that I could fill out these little forms of my prayer requests, and my mom gave me pre-packaged, envelopes of stamps, and I would just mail to the one lady. She would photocopy it and send it out to all the prayer partners who signed up to pray for 4 years. My mom said, can you sign up for 4 years and pray for my daughter? And whatever prayer requests. And so one lady sent those all out to everybody else. And that was, I don't know where I would be without those prayer partners, but my mom was intentional. She set that up. She said, we're leaving our son, and then my brother, we're leaving my son and daughter, in this country. We're going back to Brazil. So that was another thing I thought of. And then the last thing I thought of for parents was, I had 2 more things. One was make church a positive experience for your kids. I grew up not really liking church and really not wanting to go to church. And what I think about MKs and college and adult MKs is that church is the community that can come alongside of you and can help you to grow in your faith, to help you transition well. When you have mental health crisis, it's the church. And so many MKs don't like the American church, including myself. And God really had to change my heart toward the church and help me to understand what it was and to get involved. And it's been such a blessing in my heart, but I did not grow up with a very positive church experience. And then the last thing I thought of is for the parents is, don't prioritize your calling over your kids. And when your kids need you, they need you. And I went to visit this college student in North Carolina. She was at Appalachian State University. And we were having a great time at lunch and talking, and everything was fine. And all of a sudden she broke down in tears. And so I didn't know what I had said, but what she said is, I'm really struggling and I can't tell my parents because if they know how I'm really doing, they'll leave the mission field. And I'd met her parents and I don't know them super well, but I said to her, you really need to tell your parents how you're doing. You need to explain. And my thing is God is the one who wants his glory known among the nations, and he can make his glory known among the nations. He can make it happen. He does not need to use us. He does not need to use my parents in Brazil or her parents working in Africa, or that he can still accomplish his purposes with or without us. And he's called parents to be parents, and parents to parent their kids, whether they're 30, 20, 50. And yeah, and so just to encourage parents that if your kids need you, they need you. And those unreached people groups, those other nations are still God can still figure out how to make his glory known there as well. So that was a lot of things.
I absolutely love that. No, that's really amazing. Thank you so much. And I guess like a bonus question, what would maybe be like something like your first piece of advice you would tell an MK like fresh off the boat coming to the States? I'm sure you've met quite a few MKs like that. Like, I don't know, first line of defense.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that, but
yeah, I know, it's just a bonus question that popped into my mind.
Yeah. No, so what I normally do is I try to just listen to where they're at. So I think sometimes like my first piece of any advice or whatever is based on where they're coming from or what is going on with them. I don't know if this will answer your question, but just a quick story is when I was first starting out ministry, I did a survey of all of our mission, and basically they said, hey, focus on our college students because that's when they're not with us, but don't do that if you don't have a relationship with them. And I was like, well, how do I do a relationship? And so I would say speaking truth into somebody else's life is best done in relationship. And so I don't like to do cold turkey, visit you in college. I'm like, oh yeah, you should do this or you should do that, without having that relationship. And in that relationship, then I can see, oh, this workshop would be really helpful, or reading this article, or hey, here's a book that really helped me with that. And or hey, I'd love to talk to you and talk more about that topic. Or then I remember visiting this girl at Liberty University, and we went out to dinner, and I forgot all the things that she was thinking about and working through, but I gave her some things, a couple articles, maybe a book or some things I thought, but I had visited her in Europe. I'd seen her at a European conference. Her family had come to the home office. So as she was growing up, I had seen her a couple different times. So when I met with her in college, I knew what country she was coming from. I knew what her home looked like. I knew where she had lived. And so she goes home for Christmas back to Europe, and her mom says to her, hey, how's college going? I know you're struggling. You're probably having a hard time. Like, how bad is it? And the girl's like, Mom, I'm fine. And the mom said, no, really, like, I know you're supposed to be struggling. Like, I really want to know. And the girl is like, no, I'm fine. And mom's like, no, really. Like last day she's there, for Christmas break. And the mom's like, no, seriously, I really, tell me. And finally the girl said, Mom, I'm fine. Tammy came to visit me and she helped me and she gave me some stuff to think about and to read. And so yeah, I'm fine. Like and doing really well. So the mom writes a letter to the mission office and like includes like the president and the vice president and a bunch of people in there. And so I get an email from somebody in our office and saying, what article and book did you give her? And I'm like, no, it's not, here's one size fits all. Like, here's not the list of what to say or what to do. I sat over dinner with her, picked her up at her dorm. We drove to the restaurant, sat there and ordered the food, ate all the food, like drove her back to the dorm. And in that conversations, I'm like, hey, here are some things that would be helpful to you because of where you're coming from, because of the things that are going on in your life right now. And so that's what, yeah. So to answer the question, I'm like, I would want to know a little bit more of their story, or what is going on, or I would say the main, maybe one thing is, if they've never heard about TCK, of like, read one of the books, or read the TCK book. And because sometimes people don't know that they're a third culture kid, and that puts words to our experience and gives an understanding and a baseline, and then you can start processing. So I would like start there if they don't know anything about being a third culture kid.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Tammy. This has been great.